Hello, hello. It says I'm live. Good evening from Sweden. Hello. Is it Line? Is that how you say your name? I'm happy you're here and Lori's here. I am so happy to see you all because I have something that I want to talk to you about today. And that is a comment that I got yesterday, I think it was, on my latest YouTube video about the hard conversation that ended my 17-year marriage. And in the video, I'm talking about how we don't express ourselves um, because maybe we're scared to, or we're taught not to say no, not to speak up. And I shouldn't generalize. I was taught that, and I know that many women were taught that as well, to not speak up. And so over time, for me, not speaking up, I basically lost my voice, right? I didn't think I had the right to speak up. And I thought that everybody else was the authority in my life, that they knew better than me. Just all of these things that I turned that conditioning that I had when I was young, I turned that into me not using my voice and then ultimately basically losing my voice, my ability to express myself. Yes, that's how you say it. Cool, Line. I love that. And love that you're here from Sweden. Thanks for joining me. So, someone commented on that video and she said, so we're going to look at this. She was talking about her husband, but we're going to look at it from the lens of, is this how we are perceived? Is this how we come across? Is this what we're doing to ourselves when we don't express ourselves? She said, my husband does this. He doesn't express himself. He numbs himself and stays busy with workaholism to avoid being his true self. He never even expresses preferences about neutral things like what food he likes. Now, I want you to consider yourself in this situation. Do you do this? Are you like, I don't care, we'll go wherever you want to go, or those kind of things. It's painful, she said, to be the other person in this dynamic because we are left to make all the decisions and carry the relationship emotionally, all while knowing something is off. Right? So that's what I want to talk about today. That many of us, many women that I've talked to, and I'm speaking mostly to women, although I know, just like in this instance, her husband was this way, but I think it's more common in women because of how we are conditioned when we're young to be the good girl, to be nice. And someone else commented on this video also that she said, did was it just a whole generation of women, our generation, that were raised this way? Because she said it seems to be very prevalent in this age bracket. So I don't know. I would love to know, were you taught this? Were you taught to not speak up? That if you're female, to be a good girl, to be nice, to someone else had commented one time that her dad told her, "You're prettier when you're quiet." That's a horrible thing to hear as a child, right? And so, because it takes away, it's disempowering, right, over time. And what happens is when we're young, and I don't know if you know, but I'm really into the subconscious and how our subconscious mind works because our life is driven 95% by our subconscious. So when we're young, when we're born, we're basically born as blank computers. And everything that we experience and hear and um what's the word, kind of project or perceive, that's a better word, perceive about something that's happening in our life, all of that goes in as basically what's the software that then runs our life, the 75 or the 95% of what runs our life. So if we don't examine what the software was that we were given when we were young, then we're going to be running that software. There's no other alternative because the subconscious, it doesn't make decisions on its own. It only can protect and um, perceive based on what is programmed into it. So Lori said, I don't parents slash adults understand the power of their words. You don't think maybe parents or adults understand the power of their words. Absolutely. And yes, from the age of 0 to 12, all we do is record. Yes, that's a great way to put it. And we record as the truth. The subconscious doesn't know the difference between real and false or truth, real or fiction. It doesn't know reality. It perceives everything that is programmed in, everything that is recorded in, like Lori said, as truth, as fact. This always happens. I'm in Arizona, Phoenix, and it's very, very dry. So, so then we're just running this recording. It's like putting on, for those of you that are old enough, a cassette tape, right? And it's just running the tape, the 8 track on repeat. Like on a on an 8 track, I think you could skip ahead to sections, but you couldn't skip ahead to the next song. So you had to wait all the way through to get back to the song that you liked. But that's what happens is our subconscious, our unconscious, we're just on autopilot and we're running what's already programmed in there. If you think about when you get in your car, do you think about putting on your seatbelt? No, you don't think about pressing the brake and starting the car and then putting in a park or into drive or reverse to get out of your garage, right? It's automatic. And to grow up not expressing ourselves is just as automatic as putting on your seatbelt. So many parenting books out there talking about raising children, and I don't ever recall seeing any book talking about this. Really powerful message, Heidi. Yeah, it is super powerful. There's a book called, and I'll add it into the description, called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. This book has been, I have to make myself a note or I'll forget what to say. The author is Shad Helmstetter. It is so powerful because he puts it out there in very simple terms, and it is, and he explains this subconscious, but in a really easy way to understand. He gives an analogy of if you had someone come in and clean out all the stuff in your house, like because you wanted to get new furniture. So, say you wanted to get new self talk, right? And so you have this person come in and clean everything out of your house, but they put it out in your garage. So you're living in your house, and that night there's no one there, and you're alone, and you have no furniture, nowhere to sit, nowhere, nothing. So you decide, well, this is kind of uncomfortable. I'm just going to go out and get a chair, right? And then before you know it, you have all that stuff that you didn't like, that you wanted to get rid of, back in your house again. And that's the same way with self-talk. We have to consciously work at reprogramming the self-talk that we no longer want, that no longer serves us in our life. And it's true, like Lori said, it's really important because a child's mind is so, it's so much like a sponge. So everything that they perceive, that they hear directly, that they hear indirectly, everything that they experience goes into that sponge and it becomes the program. So it's so important if you're a parent to be really conscientious about the words that you're saying to your children because they're taking them all in as the truth. And so I took in when I was young, right? If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all, right? Well, and then that became a mantra basically that I heard in my head. And but I questioned, well, what was considered nice, right? If someone hurt me and I said that hurt me, that could be considered not nice. So I wouldn't say that hurt me. I would just stuff it down because that's what I learned to do, right? I learned to stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about, right? So words and emotions I learned, and my parents were not abusive in any way. They were just doing the best that they knew how. And my mom and I, she's almost 95, she'll be 95 next month. My mom and I have talked about this recently. And because I said, why weren't you more like demonstrative with your emotions and with your like physical touch and hugging, right? I don't remember my mom hugging me when I was young. And for, right, a girl especially, I think it's pretty devastating. I mean, you can tell I'm 63 and it still impacts me. So Lena says she was raised this way too. Also smile, then you'll be liked, right? Smile, right? And so we were taught to fake it, right? Because mostly, probably you were told to smile when you were upset about something. Just like wipe that frown, turn that frown upside down, right? Instead of instead of instead of our parents or caregivers or teachers or whoever they were being curious about what made us sad, it was just easier to want to shut that down and go back to, everything being good and happy, right? And I don't believe in most instances that this was done maliciously. So I was taught, right, to be easy. Everything was fine, right? What's wrong? Nothing. It's fine, right? We then grow. Lori said, "You're spot on. I do believe most parents do the best they know how." Right. Both my parents had rough childhoods. My mom spent years in an orphanage. Oh, wow. So she had no baseline for love. Right. So, yeah, we're all coming from, right, our lineage. And it didn't just start with me. It started generations before me. My ancestors are Swedish. They came over. It took them 3 months on a boat to get to the United States. So, right, they struggled and they weren't about necessarily life being easy, and so it just is passed down from one generation to the next. And like that person said to me that it seems like we are a generation of women who were all taught the same thing, taught to be pleasing, to be people pleasers, and it's like an epidemic. English teacher Anne. Hi, Anne. This makes sense. Mine were abusive. I'm so sorry because that, again, it all goes into the subconscious. And then that is a program that runs your life thinking that probably you're not worthy of love or of, of caring, or maybe you became fearful of speaking up because it meant that you were not safe when you spoke up. I was told repeatedly that I'm not thoughtful and considerate, not good enough, etc., since the age of 8 or 9, and now I struggle to shed those identity and beliefs. I'm so sorry. Thank you for sharing that, because that will help other people to know that they're not alone, right, in this. And if you're new here, I don't recognize your channel name, but if you're new here, that's what I do. I coach women to find those beliefs, because many of those limiting beliefs are hiding in a blind spot. We don't even know they're there. Maybe because we've ignored them for so long, maybe we've avoided them because it hurts too bad to look back there to see it, or maybe you just don't even know that it's there. I've worked with many clients who, as we were talking and working through sessions, they have these aha moments about, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that I believed that. One woman said that she figured out, as we were talking about her mom and the relationship between her and her mom and what she saw, how she saw her mom struggle. She said, without even thinking about it, toiling and struggling make me a better person. So she's been living under this limiting belief that if she is not struggling, she's a lawyer, if she's not struggling in her day-to-day life, right? If she doesn't always have too much work on her plate, if she wants to have fun, this belief in her unconscious was keeping her, would sabotage her every time she wanted to have fun. It would tell her, you really should be working on that stack of papers that you have on your desk, right? And so these beliefs, she didn't even realize it was there. And then once she realized it, she could start reprogramming it, right? So we have to know what's there, what is on that cassette tape or 8-track tape or record, whatever it is that's running, right? The recording, whatever the recording is, let's re-record it, right? Let's download new software. And that's what I do as a coach. I help you download new software. So if you're interested in that, I think my link is in the description. And if not, I will put it in the description and in a comment after this live is over. So watch for that. Also, since you bring that up, I have a women's wisdom circle that is starting February 18th. It's a Wednesday, and that link is in the description of this video, of this live stream, and it's called Choosing Me. So in that, it's 7 sessions, and we will be looking at all of these ways that we have not been choosing ourselves. We haven't been speaking up and learning how to stop feeling guilty and selfish about choosing ourselves first. Because unless our cup is full, we can't give easily to another person without it harming us. But once our cup is full, then it's easy to give from the overflow. But as people pleasers, or as women, like Anne said, maybe being abused, so growing up that way where you always had to be serving another person for your own safety. Sometimes it was for your own safety, right? Mine wasn't necessarily for my own safety, but the subconscious, again, doesn't know the difference between real and false. So it thinks that if I am if I were to say no, that would equal me being unsafe, maybe in the way of being rejected or abandoned. So the subconscious is so powerful, but the beautiful thing is this identity that we've created through these stories, through this programming, through this recording that we've had in there, it can be reprogrammed. You can create a new identity for yourself, and that's what we're doing in choosing me. Creating the identity, the future self, the Lori 2.0, the Anne 2.0, the Line 2.0 that you want to be so that you can start taking action in the movement or in the direction of that person and start being her now. So that link for more information is down in the description. I would love for you to check it out, see what you think. It's always an invitation, not an obligation. Um, and if you have questions, please feel free to ask me about that. So back to what we were talking about, even though this is all in the same theme of not speaking up. So we were taught, right, to not speak up. We were taught to be easy, to be low maintenance. And again, like for Anne, um, oh, I'm glad you feel seen, Anne. Thank you. I feel seen. I'm fairly new here. I recently subscribed. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. And I hope that you'll come back. I do a live stream every Wednesday at 2:22 Eastern time in the US. So every Wednesday I'm here. And if you have a question, feel free to ask. And if it's too much for me to answer here in the live stream, I will be glad to create another live stream about it next week. So feel free to ask. Um, so when we're being silent and not expressing ourselves, like this commenter said, about the person in her life, they weren't expressing themselves. And it was very frustrating and emotionally draining for her to try and take on and figure out what he wanted, right? So when we don't express ourselves, when we're the other person not expressing ourselves, which is what we were taught not to do or to not do, inside we can get tension and it can begin to be irritating to us. We feel dismissed, right? Like Anne just said, she feels seen. Maybe for the first time in a long time, right? Because when we're not expressing what we're going through, how can we be seen? Right? And I think that's a tricky part of it is we were taught not to express, and then we get pissed off and resentful at the other person for not seeing us. But how can they see us when we're not even seeing ourselves? Right? When we're not expressing ourselves, that means we're hiding who we are. And we're hiding who we are from ourselves. Maybe because it hurts too much, or maybe we think we'll be judged for expressing who we are. Maybe we've been hurt so many times by expressing that it's just easier, it's more comfortable. But like I said in the long form video, the hard conversation that ended my 17-year marriage, for 15 years, I didn't express myself. I didn't express how unhappy I was. I didn't express it to him, but I also was avoiding it in myself. And I started numbing. I started drinking too much and eating too much. I gained a lot of weight during that marriage. And because I was numbing myself, I didn't want to face what I felt about myself. And I thought that if I allowed myself to be seen, I wouldn't be loved. I wouldn't be accepted because I thought the person that I was unacceptable, was unlovable, right? So that's what happens. That's the screwed up thing about this programming that we get taught when we're young and how it plays out into our adult life. We have this quiet disappointment because no one's seeing me, right? No one's um It feels like no one's accepting me. And but what this looks like on the outside when we've grown up not expressing ourselves, learning that it's a bad thing to do. On the outside, right, we're agreeable. We're we're calm, we're unproblematic, right? We're the ones to not rock the boat, to just we walk on eggshells to keep everybody else comfortable because maybe we're so uncomfortable in ourselves for because we're so afraid to speak up because we haven't, right? It is kind of a skill that if you were taught not to do it, you have to start learning. And I'm going to give you a couple of things how you can make it a little bit easier to start expressing yourself if you haven't done it for so long. Let me see what I'm missing here. Lori said, my childhood home was very violent. So I literally would do everything to stay unseen. Took decades to find myself, but I can honestly say I love who I am. Thanks for sharing that, Lori. And I can see that in your YouTube channel, how the way you express yourself to others is you, in a way, healing that as you go, right? By helping other people see that in themselves. So, yeah, I definitely honor you for that. And I'm sorry that you went through that as a child because it, right? We are all born worthy. So, period. I don't need to go any further than that. If we can get that in our heads and in our hearts, right? We do too much thinking about it versus feeling about it. So if we can start feeling with all our being that the moment we were conceived worthy, and there's nothing that we did or could do to take away that worthiness in any of us, in any of you. Mm. Lori said, I truly believe my parents were two of my greatest teachers, right? Our experiences, the people that are in our lives were there for a reason, right? They were there for our soul's journey. We think that, you know, that we're here in a body and that this body is me. This body is not me, right? My body is, I mean, my me is my soul, my spirit. It's not, this is just the container. Someone, I don't remember who it is, someone calls it a meat suit. It's just my meat suit to get through this earthly journey, right? And so that I can have physical experiences with other people and with life. Without this meat suit, I couldn't have those physical experiences. We are born worthy. We do not need to earn our worthiness, right? And I'm so happy. So Lori said, Anne, I'm so happy you feel seen here. Heidi does such a wonderful job helping all of us feel seen. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. And it does touch me for you to say that. I'm writing a book actually about feeling seen because I went for most of my life until I was about 55 and I didn't realize it, but I went not feeling seen and it comes from my birth story. So all of that will be in the book. But it goes back deeper and farther than we ever imagined it could. And again, mine came from my birth story. Thank you, Laura. I'm glad I made it to this live. I'm glad you're here too, Anne. Okay, so why we do it. I already talked about that. We learned that being agreeable was safer, right? Than being honest. Anne and Laura, you both can attest to that. If you grew up in, violent homes, abusive homes, then you learned and your subconscious got very attuned to staying silent was what kept me safe. And the subconscious mind's main job is to keep us alive. And so if it feels any sign of danger, if it not feels, but if it perceives any sign of danger, right, it goes into protection mode, and that could be fight, flight, freeze, appease, which is fawn. Um, so whatever whatever is happening, the subconscious's job is to keep you safe and to keep you alive. So it will have you react, act in certain ways, behave in certain ways to do whatever it is you need to do to stay safe and to stay alive. And that most in what we're talking about today, most likely that meant then that you couldn't express yourself. Lori, maybe you said this already, but you said you would do everything to stay unseen. So does that mean then that you wouldn't speak up? You wouldn't say if someone was treating you poorly or someone hurt your feelings? Like, is that is that what you would do? And I learned a long time ago, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. It's not a coincidence you found this live stream. Oh, right. And tears are good. Yes, they are. I love, well, and again, I was taught when I was young, my mom used to say, and I hate the word now, bawl, B-A-W-L, stop bawling or I'll give you something to bawl about. So now I smooth it over a little bit by saying, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. But she was uncomfortable with my tears because she didn't know what to do with them, right? She didn't know what was wrong because she never asked. At the age that I got to, though, I'm not sure that I would have maybe told her because possibly I no longer felt safe expressing myself in any way. So I don't know because that never happened. Um, so again, we learned that agreeable was safer than being honest. We we feared being a burden, right? Or being difficult. And again, for those of you that were raised in, abusive or violent homes or surroundings, then you certainly learned to not be a burden because that could mean punishment, right? And so not speaking up, just suppressing our voice, suppressing our emotions was the way that we coped with that fear and dealt with it in our own child way. Um, we also maybe believed that love meant sacrifice. Maybe that's what we learned, that love just meant sacrifice or abuse or, conflict. And so we I didn't say that right. That love meant sacrifice, so we would sacrifice our voice to avoid the abuse and the confrontation, the conflict. And we learned maybe that conflict avoidance was the way to be nice, to be good, that actually meant being kind. And so now as adults, if we haven't examined this, right, it that's what is going to continue to show up because it's the programming that's in there. So let's reprogram that, right? Um, this this not expressing ourselves though as adults ends up creating resentment in us. And I talked about that a little bit already. It can create exhaustion in us um, because we're 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 just suppressing that emotional the emotions. And I say that when we suppress our emotions, it's basically like being constipated. If we do that long enough, we build up toxicity in the body, and that is going to come out some way, right? Just like if you were constipated physically for a long time, something not good is going to result from that. Our bodies aren't meant to function that way. If we are emotionally suppressing, we are emotionally constipated, and that is going to come out in your sleep, anxiety, migraines, uh, disease, right? That emotional suppression is dis-ease in the body, which can lead to disease. And I'm gonna do a video on this, but I just learned this recently, almost 80% of all autoimmune diseases occur in women. Why is that? Right? Things like, thyroid Hashimoto's, lupus, MS. I'm missing there's a couple other common ones, but those kind of things, and I got Hashimoto's, a couple weeks after I found out that my husband of just 2.5 years had had an affair, and that's what that video, the hard conversation, that ended my 17-year marriage, that's what that video is about, and I did link that video in the description, so if you haven't seen that yet, go check that out when the live is over. And speaking of that, um, I want to end in oh, wow, I was gonna end in, at the top of the hour, and that's 2 minutes away. So, when we don't express ourselves, though, I wanna talk quickly about what this does to the other person, not only to us. We think we're resentful because they're not meeting our needs, right? But we haven't expressed our needs. They also are getting resentful because they have to guess what we want, what we need, what we feel, what we want for dinner, what restaurant we want to go to, right? We put all that emotional labor on them to decide. And that gets frustrating for the other person as well. So it's not just impacting us, it impacts all of our relationships. And I'm not talking about just your intimate partner. I'm talking about all of your relationships in your life, your boss, coworkers, friends, your family, and then your partner, your kids. When we don't express ourselves, the other person can't ever know what we want. They can't read our minds, they can't guess, and therefore they're never getting to know the real us. So that creates ultimately distance in with your boss, with friends, with coworkers, with family, with your spouse or partner. It can't not create distance in your relationship. So, and I think the hard truth that most of us miss, and I alluded to this already a little bit based on what Anne had said, was that we can't feel seen if we don't show ourselves. Let that sink in. We cannot feel seen ourselves, and therefore we can't feel accepted. We can't feel loved. We can't feel connection when we aren't allowing ourselves to be seen. And I know when we've hidden for most of our life, it can feel scary to start stepping out into that arena of, like, being naked and being seen and allowing the tears and allowing the pain and allowing all that has been stuffed down to come out, to allow the constipation to break free, right? It can be a lot at first, but we have to allow it in order to heal. If you are physically constipated, you have to do something about that in order to start flowing freely again. I went through this with my mom in 2021. She got COVID, it was a whole thing, and she at 91 years old, she got COVID and pneumonia in both lungs and a blood clot, and is still alive and thriving and living on her own independently, so she is a miracle woman. Um, but she got C. diff, if anybody knows what that is, in isolation with COVID. So some healthcare worker brought it to her because no one was allowed to visit her. I wasn't allowed to visit her. And she got C. diff. Then when she got home from the hospital, because that is a, if you don't know, a bacteria in the intestines that can be deadly, and it causes extreme diarrhea, and they cannot keep anything in, from here or down there. It just is gonna come out one way or the other. And, um, so then she got home from the hospital to my place. I was taking care of her, in her recovery, and she got constipated for 3 or 4 days, and I had to call 911. She was in so much pain, and she was impacted, and they had to basically intervene in order, and I know this is not but again, that's what happens when we don't express ourselves, right? It starts to build up, and it can turn into this massive problem in many different ways. So, we can't feel seen though if we don't show ourselves. And to show ourselves, that means we have to express ourselves. So, a couple speaking up is start with neutral preferences. Food schedules, plans, opinions that feel small. Start there, right? Start with making small choices. Practice saying what you like before you're upset, right? Don't wait. Do low risk things. Those low risk things have really high, fast retraining value. You will start retraining your subconscious really quickly when you start making what seem like embarrassingly small, simple choices. Sometimes when I was going through this, I would say to myself in my house, I'm going to go down and make myself a snack of cheese and crackers and jam, right? I would choose versus standing in front of the refrigerator, just letting my subconscious choose for me. So you can do that. And then the second action is to replace I'm fine with one honest sentence. Like, I actually do have a preference. I would like to go to have pizza. No, I don't really feel like having Chinese tonight, right? Start making one small honest sentence. You can also, I need a minute to think about that. Let me get back to you. This is what I tell people when someone asks you something face to face or on the phone or via a text. If you aren't sure that you want to say yes to it, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. That's an easy sentence to say. And then tell them, I'll get back to you tomorrow. And then get back to them. And when you get off the phone or you put down your phone and you truly look at, if I say yes to this, how am I going to show up? Am I going to show up resentful? Am I going to show up begrudgingly? Or am I saying yes because I feel obligated, or I feel like it would be unloyal to me to say no, or of me to say no, or it would be selfish, or I feel guilty. So really look at, how am I answering their question? Anne said, oh, I missed some chat here. Um, okay, Lori said, oh my God, I would never speak to anyone unless I felt my words could protect my siblings. For some reason, my sister, brother got the brunt of the anger. I think I had divine protection for some reason. Interesting. And Anne said, "Yes, I've been living in survival mode. I couldn't be myself. I never felt safe. I had to play small and push everything down." Choosing me, the Women's Wisdom Circle, we are gonna be talking about exactly what you're talking about. I'll just tell you, it's $222. It's 7 weeks every other week. It starts on February 18th, but if you click on that link in the description, it will give you all the details. Again, it's an invitation, not an obligation, but I would love to have you in there and support you in that way in that circle. But we are gonna be speaking to exactly what you're talking about because so many of us are living in survival mode. We are living on autopilot and we don't even recognize it because we've done it for so long. But that's all our subconscious knows. So I would love for any of you listening, right? If if that is where you're at, I would love to have you in that circle because I know it could serve you well. I've been living this I couldn't be myself, I never felt safe, I had to play small and push everything down, and so that little girl, right, that little girl, that little hurt girl was, like, always had to be in protection mode, right, and so now she's running the show, and you have your defenses up at all times because even as an adult, that's still what's in your subconscious. It can also feel impossible to figure out what to express because if you've hidden yourself for most of your life, you might not even know yourself. Exactly. And exactly. That's what we're going to be talking about. How we don't even know what we want, what we need. That was me. I had no clue what I wanted, what I needed, what I had the right to say. Really, I had the right to say no. I could say, "No, that doesn't work for me. That's not okay with me. Don't touch me that way." I didn't know I had the right. And so but then I lived in resentment because I'm like, "These people are taking advantage of me. I'm so nice. Why are they taking advantage of me? It's not right. They're mean. They're wrong. They're cruel." I set myself up, not purposefully, right? You didn't do it on purpose. It was what was in my subconscious. To me, saying no and speaking up for myself was not safe, just like many of you are expressing. So you have a hard time figuring out what to express because you've hidden yourself for most of your life, right? We wear these masks, right? We smile through the hurt, through the pain, through the sadness. We're always smiling because that's the image we want to project to the world because that's what we were taught. That was how I felt, but I found myself eventually. I'm glad you did, Lena. Anne said, I can relate. Sometimes I have trouble expressing myself because I don't even know how to express or what I'm even feeling. It's a numbing feeling, the "I don't know what I want" feeling. Right, exactly. So that's why it's important. That's why this making small choices, starting to make small decisions, even if it's with yourself, talking yourself through it. One thing you can do that I didn't talk about, but if you're feeling that, like, that you're kind of in survival mode or you're just feeling blah or not sure what would bring you happiness or what would even take you up to the next notch, what I invite you to do is to sit with yourself for just 10 seconds and rate how you're feeling from 1 to 10. 10 would be great, like joyful, exhilarated, and 1 or 0 would be bleh, right? Like unworthy, yuck, I don't like myself, I don't like what I see in the mirror, I just don't feel good, I don't feel connected, whatever that is, right? And then write that on a piece of paper, how you feel, and then write down 2 or 3 things that could take you up 1 or 2 numbers. I don't want you to try to get from a 2 to a 10 or even a 2 to a 9 or a 3 to a 9. I want you to go from a 3 to a 4. If you keep practicing that day after day, so write down, okay, going for a walk would feel good. It would get me outside, it would get me in the sunshine. I live along the canal, so I can go feed the ducks. They eat out of my hand. I love that. Makes me happy. I live near a mountain, so I could go for a hike. Um, I could cook a meal. I could read a book. I could watch a movie, whatever. It doesn't have to be something, you know, some grand gesture for healing. It could be take a bath, it could be take a nap. It doesn't matter. Write down a couple things and then pick one and go do it. Whatever that thing is, write down a couple things that would take you up one number on the scale and then go do it. Right? That doesn't have to take a lot of time. But if we just say, "Oh, I don't feel good," and then we sit in that crappy feeling, we're not taking any action to feel any differently. So take a small action to make yourself, to allow yourself to feel differently, right? Does that help? Does that make sense? The I don't know what I want feeling. So get in touch with what you want. Don't think about it. What would feel good? Oh my gosh, I'm a little chilly, so a bath would feel awesome, right? And bubbles and a glass of wine or a coffee, or maybe I'm gonna take myself to, the coffee shop and sit and read a book and drink a coffee. Um, Whatever it is. A couple weeks ago was my birthday, and I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna take myself out to lunch, and I'm gonna go to a really yummy place and treat myself well, and just sit there and enjoy my lunch." Sit at a place I sat, like, up at the bar in the restaurant, like, where they were taking food orders and all of that, so that I could chat with the person behind, the register and, the people, like, right there behind the line, and, yeah, it was amazing, and it uplifted me, right? So do the little things. Don't think that they have to be these grand gestures that you're gonna, again, go from a 2 to a 9 in one day, because that's not practical, and it's not going to be helpful because you're gonna feel like you're failing when you don't feel better as you think you should when all is said and done. So, this isn't, right, about blaming yourself. You were using coping mechanisms, doing what you had to do to survive, to make it into adulthood alive, but now you're here, right? And you can start healing that hurt girl that's inside that is still maybe running the show. I'm doing a program right now and getting certified in something called the primal question, 7 primal questions. And we all have a primal question, according to Mike Foster, the author of this methodology. Um, and he calls it kid logic. We all have a primal question that we grew up asking subconsciously for a yes answer to. And if we got a no or a maybe, and I would guess, Anne and Lori, that being in violent and abusive, your primal question might be, am I safe? Um, am I safe? Am I secure? Am I loved? Am I wanted? Am I successful? Am I good enough? And do I have a purpose? Those are the 7 primal questions that he came up with. And so he says that as adults, then we stay in this kid logic, right? Of where the subconscious, again, is wanting a yes answer to our primal question. Mine is, am I loved? And if we get a no or maybe, we go into what he calls the scramble. And that is the kid logic. Like, what do I have to do to feel safe? What do I have to do to feel that I have a yes answer to, am I loved? And so it's a fascinating philosophy. And you can take the primal question assessment for free and find out what your primal question is. And I'll be talking about that more in upcoming lives and in my videos. Like I said, I'm getting certified and I'll be certified at the end of this month in that so I can share it completely as a Primal Question Pro coach. Um, yeah, no worries, Lori. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it and sharing all your thoughts. So thank you for being here. And so what was I saying about that? So this isn't about blaming yourself, right? It's that we're going back to the coping mechanisms that we had when we're young. And it's about reclaiming our voice, finding out who we are, what we want, what we like, what we desire, what works for me, what's okay with me, what my preferences are, what they aren't. And believe me, I had to go through this as well because I had no idea who I was at the end of the day. And the last thing I want to say is that speaking up is not selfish. We have to speak up for ourselves because no one's going to do it for us. That's why we're put here on earth to live our life, not someone else's. And when we're not speaking up, we're not living our life. So with that, I will go before I start having a coughing fit. I appreciate you all being here so much. And if you're watching the replay, share your comments in the comment section. And I will see you next Wednesday at same place, same bat channel. Have a great week.